Project Lawful aka Plane Crash by Arwayne aka Eliezer Yudkowsky and Lintamande. What the Truth Can Destroy. Episode 162.
The Chelish dialect of Taldane has been optimized by something akin to natural selection over the last decades to no longer contain openly uncomplimentary meanings of hellish among the bourgeoisie, whose children sometimes become security wizards. In the first couple of generations, things became hellishly challenging, hellishly relentless, hellishly sadistic, and cruel. Not hellishly bad. You didn't say that where an Asmodean priest could hear you, meaning any time, and your children grew up not hearing it used that way. In the couple of generations after, infernal loanwords into Chelish Taldane started to displace less precise, less useful, overly general terms like the Taldane Hellish. 3 of the 5 other languages Keltham can now anchor his mind on have adjectives that obviously sound a lot like hell and mean torturous, painful, hope-crushing, soul-destroying, very extremely bad. The screen on his rope trick entrance shatters, and Ione pokes her head up through it, holding her mouth open to display a small cookie.
Ione Sala quickly finishes climbing in, swallowing the cookie, and says, "Swore an oath not to tip you off if you didn't already know. Snack Service says the decision theory is still complicated, so it can't help directly, but it gave me a cookie to celebrate you finding out." Mind-reading spell is 5th circle. They don't have a lot of it. I'm gambling everything on it. Not running right now. I faked a dropped paper slip from you in your handwriting saying that you wanted Ione Sala to come up and answer some questions. We've got only minutes at best. Step 1 of my plan is for you to poke out your head and call in Sevar and Asmodia, with Sevar coming in first and Asmodia following a minute after. Sevar's new earrings look genuine to my detect magic, and there's a complicated reason in their game why the earrings would actually be real, so you'll do things that count as evil. There'll be some other tactic to make sure you can't just order Sevar to speak truth, but maybe it doesn't work if Sevar doesn't know it's coming, or it's just a special exclusion in the earrings. Step 2 of my plan is stun Sevar. Put the earrings on her, have her get the drop on the security outside, and use their teleport scroll. Unless you've got a better plan. This one is me making the entire thing up since I got the cookie. They read my mind, too.
The feeling of all of Ordinary's remaining probability mass vanishing the moment Ione starts talking is like, already know? Keltham didn't already know, did he? He wasn't finished already knowing, didn't have a chance to have a proper moment of realization. He was still supposed to integrate everything and double-check. It was just supposed to be a misleading line of thought that would have an obvious better answer once Keltham finished thinking it through.
There's an emergency ongoing. Execute a core fallback.
The emergency is unfortunately too complicated for Keltham to fall back on simple methods of reasoning. But he does switch off all of the emotions he can, leaving only distant sadness and delayed pain and a sickness in his stomach, a trembling in his hands. The body can't be denied as easily as the mind, but then you can also do an awful lot with your mind. Does he believe Ione?
You would really, really, really have to not think very much of Dathilan to imagine that the answer is yes.
10% that it's the simple truth, and even that much is only because of tropes and how much he doesn't know about true reality. 90% that it's a conspiracy salvage attempt. Within the conspiracy side, there's possibilities that he shouldn't let them read his mind about. Will he see an opportunity for a real escape inside the fake escape? Can he get Carissa and Innocent, Yone with him when he goes? Does Innocent, Yone go to the fire afterlife? Hell if Keltham doesn't play along. He won't do anything that reduces his chance at his primary escape plan. Okay, so the next step of the plan is for me to tell them to send up Carissa, and then Asmodia a minute after Carissa comes in. Keltham starts to lean down toward the rope trick's opening.
Control your expression. Control your voice. Security would notice instantly that something's wrong with you.
Like this?
This sure is an earlier point for the plan to fail than the earliest point at which she imagined it failing.
Yeah, okay. He can read that expression. No doubt because Ione is making an effort to be readable to him. Keltham casts Eagle's splendor on himself, only thinking when the gesture is half complete that he's expending a resource for the sake of playing along with a lie, but it's not a key resource, and his hands have finished the motion before his worrying cortex can manage to inhibit it. He's not really at his best. Keltham had wondered before why splendor charisma was a reasonable characteristic, to be one of only 3 major mental attributes at the center of Galarian's conceptual magic. Splendor didn't seem on par with wisdom, let alone cunning intelligence. He didn't see what manipulating people, or pretending to be other people, had to do with like sorcery casting or paladin casting. It seemed like a case of there just being 3 attributes, 2 of which were in use by wizards and clerics, so the third one got assigned to sorcerers and paladins, even if that made no sense. That, of course, was when Keltham didn't need splendor. When his mind wasn't in a posture where increased splendor would make a difference to anything but play acting. Keltham's hesitating will firms itself. His faltering drive moves back into motion. His emotions grow stronger, but the spell also increases his ability to crush his emotions down, and his ability to continue despite them. And when that's added to Dathilani disciplines, it's enough to go on delaying the pain. Better?
It'll have to do.
Keltham sticks his head out of the rope trick and asks them to send up Carissa, followed by Asmodia 1 minute later. Okay, now what's the plan for subduing Carissa?
Wait until Sevar is far enough in not to fall down, then rip off her headband. It's an artifact headband instead of her usual one. Losing it should disorient her enough that you can, subdue her, if that story was true, and get the earrings onto her. And then command her to take no voluntary actions, and then heal her.
A spark of real interest lights in Keltham. And then we put the artifact headband on you instead?
Getting your hands on the cognitive enhancement device, even for a few exciting minutes, is not uncommonly a key turning point in Dathilani stories. Though with protagonists who have more Karasan and less Kelthamian attitudes towards cognitive enhancement.
Too risky, Ione says with great regret in her voice. It strikes me as the sort of exception-handling weaponry that might possibly have safeguards against unauthorized users. After a couple of months of communal share language from Keltham, everyone on the project has started to pick up some phrases in baseline. And concepts too, of course. Ione more than most. Again, of course.
The spark of interest, hope, curiosity fades. Is this really worth delaying his primary escape plan? Maybe it is, if he can haul Carissa with him on his primary escape. Asmodia. Why Asmodia? Why is the conspiracy? Ione, why Asmodia?
Asmodia is the other one who strikes me as redeemable is the wrong word, that she doesn't really want to be here. And who I think actually cares about you, which I suspected would matter to you. Was I wrong?
No, that would matter to me, if it was real, you were right. A small flow of probability shifts from conspiracy to ordinary conspiracy, though not much. Conspiracy, he'd expect to try tempting him with keeping Yaisa. Or had he actually come to care more about Asmodia, and did they know that? The sadness hits him like a punch in the gut. With the added splendor, he withstands it more by inner force than by inner fiat. Here comes Carissa. Time to play out this next part, he guesses, and hurt Carissa not for the sake of their relationship, but for... He's just not going to think about that, or whether he meant anything to her.
Wow, she says quietly as soon as she sees Keltham's face. What? Do you want...
Grab her and haul her in.
Rip off the headband.
Carissa makes a small, horrified sound and then lunges bodily at Ione. She's clumsy. If you had absolutely no context on any of this, you might think she was on drugs or possibly had rabies.
Without Bull's strength, some of his martial options become more limited, have to be done in particular ways. Grab Carissa's right arm, bring up his fist in a powerful blow to break her right elbow, to make it harder for her to draw and use her dagger. Then put Carissa into a chokehold that security insisted on training Keltham in, as an anti-spellcaster technique. Were they planning this fake escape that far back? Why is he playing along to this extent? Because maybe he can turn it real, or real enough to take Carissa with him when he actually leaves.
She doesn't actually fight him, though she does keep trying to maul Ione.
Somehow that makes it hurt worse. Some deep part of him doesn't believe in anything that's in words, words, words. It just sees him beating up Carissa, who isn't fighting back.
Dathilan hopes most of its people don't experience this stress level at any point in their lives. But always some people do, and when that time comes for them, their ability to continue operating seems like a key figure of merit for whether Dathilan has made its people stronger or weaker in the end. Keltham has been shaped to continue even now. Keltham's society has shaped itself to accomplish that quality of the people within.
Ione, earrings, left pocket last time I saw her put them in there. At some point, he's going to find whoever planned out this particular pantomime and made him do this to Carissa. Possibly Carissa, now that he thinks about it. Or were all her lines, everything she was, scripted by that same scripter?
She'll look for them and not say anything. Still there?
Still there. She finished them while they were waiting for Keltham to realize the truth.
She will attempt to apply the earrings to Savar. How easy are these earrings to apply to somebody who is, possibly pretending to be, not cooperative?
Well, obviously they were designed to be possible to put on an uncooperative person should that seem like fun.
Equestrian pumpkins. Take no voluntary action. Channel healing. What's the plan on Asmodia?
Several possibilities, but the one I was betting on was that you've still got that magic item you used to cancel Savar's magic, and you brought it along with you into this place, along with all of your unbanked money. Fallback. That Savar has a spell or item that makes Asmodia safe to take with. Worst case is killing her and taking along her body so we can resurrect her at the destination.
If you predicted I had the Curse of Magic negation item, why did you just make me break Carissa's? Because I didn't prep remove curse and we need Carissa's magic to teleport. Never mind.
One may now see Asmodia approaching the rope trick.
He'll get out the rod of Curse of Magic negation, which, yes, he's got with him along with all of his platinum pieces.
Asmodia pokes her head into the rope trick and... Sorry I'm late. Had to get my spell book and my money first for obvious reasons.
Sure, whatever. Come on in. He'll lend Asmodia a hand to pull her up. He's glad he doesn't have to hurt Asmodia in this skit. They didn't have that kind of relationship. Well, if they had any kind of relationship, it wasn't that one.
Keltham? Asmodia, why would you actually be defecting just like that? Hell owns your soul.
Not even slightly the kind of problem that'd stop an Alani. Worst case, I get a plane shift to Abaddon at the end of my life and gamble on ending up somewhere else just like Keltham did. The part where we're still in Cheliax surrounded by security is more of a problem. Is there a plan for that?
All of us against one security. Sever uses his teleport scroll.
I'll admit I was hoping there would be a better plan.
Is there a reason that plan can't work? Because we are short on time here, Asmodia?
At this moment, a tiny glowing circle appears on the wall of the rope trick, and then grows abruptly into a much larger portal, through which an elderly woman is visible. She's sitting in an armchair with a thick book open on her lap. Were you looking for a scroll of teleport? I sell those.
Cost, Keltham says. Chance this is real. Possibly higher. He'd go to 20% because it feels more like snack service and less like the usual conspiracy.
For each scroll of teleport, you must promise to entertain an old woman for 1 minute while she tries to persuade you that your plans for it are a terrible idea.
Right. So, okay, creating common knowledge. The previous escape plan was fake. This was not part of it. I hate Cheliax. For all the obvious reasons, that's why. Ione likely hates Cheliax, too. Do not free Savar. She's complicated. There's very few people in the Inner Sea who can cast Gate, and only one who'd look like that, who's also the one who'd plausibly know where we are. That's Nefredi Klepati, High Priestess of Nethys, hence why Ione is kneeling to her. She's plausibly one of the relatively better mysterious figures to make a weird deal with. You should not do that with an Asmodean.
Creating more common knowledge, Gate is actually a spell for transportation, not for talking. You can just walk through it. She stands up, sets the book down, and does so. Then, for some reason, she frowns at the floor of the rope trick and steps on a housefly. I hate to be pushy, but Gate's duration is 2 rounds per caster circles, so if you want to buy a teleport scroll or escape to freedom, you should probably do that promptly.
I'll ask, briefly, what's on the other side of that gate, and why I shouldn't teleport.
You shouldn't teleport because there are, in fact, 9 different gods that will descend on you as soon as you leave the interdiction zone, and some of them eat people. On the other side of this gate is a temple of Nethys in Andoran, near the border with Ostenso and therefore in the interdiction zone, but outside Cheliax. It is possible Cheliax will start a war with Andoran about this, but probably not because they didn't risk the actual crown of infernal majesty in their last-ditch deception. Which is too bad. In some nearby worlds I get to steal it and wear it around now, and I'd like that very much.
Asmodea's just going to walk through that gate, actually.
Ione will glance there, glance at Keltham, and say, please.
Andoran's border does not look that close to Ostenso.
Faked all the maps you saw because you'd want to visit if you knew.
Would you happen to want to swear to me that the destination of this gate is still within the interdiction zone? No is fine.
I swear to you, Keltham, that the other end of this gate is within the interdiction zone set out by Otolmens.
Carissa, follow me and otherwise take no voluntary action. And Keltham walks through.
Carissa follows.
Ione follows very quickly.
He follows too. This room is a big, big library, probably not quite as big as the one he briefly scry saw in Absalom. There's a fire crackling in a very large fireplace and a thick woolen rug on the floor. There are windows. They look out on a grubby city or maybe village with a lot of horse poop in the road.
So if, hypothetically, you wanted me to believe that any of this was real, you could earn a lot of credibility points by presenting me with a complete story about reality, all of which made sense in retrospect.
The gate closes behind them. That is what I got all of these books for, but I can tell you what the books say if you would like. Hell is not voluntary and is full of torture. The Church of Asmodeus had little purchase in Golarion, until Aradan's death plunged Cheliax into a 30-year civil war so destructive that by the time the Asmodeans won it, less than half the pre-war population remained. Since then, under Abigail's grandmother and her successors, they have shaped Cheliax into a place where everyone lives in obedient terror or dies. They realized immediately that they would have to keep this from you. Nethys knows everything, but not all at once, so I can't tell you exactly how they did that, but I think Ione will know. Nethys picked Ione just before the interdiction was placed, and was not able to give her any instructions, but I think she has done very well. Do you by any chance aspire to someday cause some very big explosions in Cheliax? She adds to Ione.
Haven't really had a chance to form any aspirations like that before, what with all the mind reading. But just on immediate reactions, rescue operation on Cheliax. Explode Asmodeus.
How did I get to Golarion? Why did I land on Carissa, especially if she's not real? Why didn't you intervene earlier if you could have intervened at any time? What is up with snack service? Who's my god? What am I allegedly supposed to do next on your theory?
The powers that brought you here are beyond the gods. I think you called them tropes, and thereby got closer to looking straight at them than most people ever do. Carissa is a real person, who is really in love with you, and also she's a loyal Asmodean who wronged you terribly trying to obey her superiors. I think probably you should try to change her mind about that, now that she's allowed to think. I was not allowed to seek you out using knowledge from the fragments of Nethys that I am, as they are subject to the interdiction. However, today knowledge of you came to me via a path not touched by gods at all, so I scried you and waited until you had your girlfriend because you'd be so sad if you left without her. Caden Kalian decided to commit himself wholly to the task of making sure you didn't rape anybody despite having lots of sex in Cheliax, which doesn't really understand how not raping people works. He told Asmodeus this served Asmodeus's interest too, presumably because you in fact could be even more mad at them than you are, somehow. Your god is Abadar. I think the next thing you should do is read a lot of books, though the next scene I am looking forward to is you talking Carissa out of Asmodeanism.
And this story's reason why Cheliax doesn't use Greater Scry to see me here. Teleport in, grab me, teleport out again.
The temple is shielded from Scry's and Sending and Bar's teleportation. Also, they would be starting a war with Andoran. But in some worlds they do that, so I don't want to rely on it.
And if I asked you about the result of my picking a random book, opening it to a random page, and reading out the first sentence there?
My vision is not that precise, not where prophecy is broken. People cannot be as random as they'd imagine, but they can behave in a way that goes different ways in nearby worlds.
Well, this part is something I'm pretty sure it's heavily determined I'd do in quite a lot of worlds. How many letters are there in the sentence I'm currently speaking?
61.
She computed that answer faster than Keltham could check it himself. But maybe not faster than somebody with an intelligence headband. Definitely too slow for a precog. Add that to the claim that Cheliax lied about Ostenso's closeness to the Andorran border this whole time, which has the feel of one of those made-up-in-retrospect stories. There's a lot of calculations Keltham has been letting his wordless perceptions do, without thinking in words, hoping that it would defeat lesser mind-reading, or the sort of mind-reading they can afford to use all the time. Keltham didn't think in words why he had to be very careful of any conspiracy attempt to get him to step outside Cheliax for a moment, why he had to check that the gate led to a location still inside the interdiction. That only covers a relatively short distance around Ostenso, according to relatively early conspiracy statements, and therefore still inside Cheliax, if none of this is real. After all, invoking his compacted right to leave Cheliax without interference might not apply if he wasn't in Cheliax. But this isn't that clever plot, apparently, so it's just the one where they try to delay him for a day, until they can prep more powerful spells. He turns to look at Carissa Savar, his Carissa, for what may be the last time. And then Keltham turns back to the old woman, who, if you look at her carefully enough, and try to see possibilities through your own face-blindness to Chelish faces, does not look definitely not like somebody he's met before. If that person wore a wig and applied colored makeup, disdaining magical disguises for fear of his glimpse of beyond spell that he still holds. Gate is 9 the circle, and if anything they told him in Cheliax was true at all, there indeed aren't many people in the Inner Sea who can cast that. To the old woman, then, he speaks. Do you really think that this doesn't happen in Dath Ilani stories? There's a thing that the protagonist says sometimes at the end of a genre-aware aerolarp, and I say it now. It's hard to speak the words, for all that they mean giving up. But everything he's giving up now is just an illusion in the first place. No, this is also not reality. Aspexia Rugaton, highest priestess of Asmodeus, who is god of hell and god of compacts. I invoke my compacted right to leave Cheliax, without interference, and to bargain without interference for my passage.
Savar, this is, to the end, your own command.
There's no further move, though, is there? They are indeed compacted to let Keltham leave, as he now wants to do. She isn't sure that the game is over, suspects, actually, somehow, that it isn't. But this act certainly is.
As you wish, Aspexia Rugaton speaks aloud.
There is slow clapping from an armchair in the corner. It turns. The problem, Nefreti Klepati says to Aspexia Rugaton, with attempting plans that complicated is that someone's pants will end up all the way across the continent.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was this plot supposed to be complicated? At what, 4 levels of recursion? Well, I suppose we're hardly inside of reality now, so maybe I'm criticizing all y'all too early.
She halts a first impulse to yell, Keltham, that's the real one! Is that the real Nefreti Klepati? Ione isn't even sure at this point. Ione Sala is not out of Cheliax yet.
Rugaton's power is about her already. She knew that to pretend herself Klepati was to court the real Nefreti. Klepati's attention, but gambled on no worse than this coming of it. I suppose I should thank Nethys. Thanks to him, we've had Keltham for rather longer than we might have otherwise, and Cheliax is now greatly advantaged compared to many possibilities that might have been. I don't suppose you know what he was doing, or Caden Kalian, and would care to explain?
Right. Wrong. Technically right. Yes, no.
Ione takes a deep breath. This is it.
Savar Rugaton Sala is defecting for real. Do we stop her?
Can they? Nefreti Klepati is here and might have some opinions about Nethys's oracle being prevented from defecting.
If Klepati's not acted before, she may be constrained, probably is, but I would not care to gamble.
Telepathy isn't a free action. Ione Sala is now already talking. Keltham, I think that's the real Klepati. Not sure, obviously. Also, that was me breaking with Cheliax for real. Ione Sala, Oracle of Nethys, of the Library's Curse. I don't know what Nethys is doing, but I expect he means me to follow you, wherever you go. I've hated Cheliax since long before I was allowed to think that to myself. I spoke to you that way in the library because Nethys had just cursed me, and I thought if I didn't make it hard for Cheliax to vanish me, I'd just be vanished. Security, Elias Abarco, gouged my eye out afterwards as a punishment, and I lay there and hurt and was so glad I wouldn't go to hell.
In the event that any of this is real, would anyone care to explain what I'm doing in Galerion and what's up with snack service?
Unfortunately, I can't be helpful to you in any way, Nefreti says cheerfully, and to Ione, your possible doctrines of Nethys are incredibly popular in Sothis. Someone carved them on the moon.
What? Wait, if Nefreti Klapati can't help them?
Lazily, with one hand, she opens a gate in front of her, while simultaneously with the other hand she casts a zone of truth. You know, sometimes I think about casting a permanent zone of truth over all of Cheliax, she says.
Sure, he'll cast detect magic to figure out what that was. Looks like an area version of his truth spell compulsion, without the indicator on it, if he's passing his spellcraft check. But then, obviously, the conspiracy can fool his detect magic.
She doesn't say anything out loud about, wait, are you not taking us with you? Because that is a very stupid thing to say in front of the High Priestess of Asmodeus, when your own High Priestess is possibly abandoning you. Can she possibly have a non-detection to screen her own thoughts for a time, at least? And Keltham could use one of those, too.
See, this is why Asmodia didn't immediately defect.
Ione, says Nefreti, the day might come where the best way for you to learn all the things you want to know is to plunge ahead right into them with Keltham. But today, the best way for you to learn all the things you want to know is to ditch this entire horrible story and come with me to my library. So I extend the invitation. However, it is a law of exiting this story here for now, that you must first reflect aloud under a truth spell on your relationship with Keltham. Otherwise, that's some unresolved plot there, and unresolved plot can really catch you where you least expect it, if you aren't me.
Not being able to speak untruths is inconvenient when it comes to claiming what you need to know, and apparently only want to know. I ask first if this is what Lord Nethys wants. And also, I do care about Keltham and don't want to just abandon him if I can continue to help him in building civilization, correctly this time, without my getting horribly tortured. Oh, she can say it under truth spell. She genuinely wasn't sure she could.
That you speak of Keltham if you're leaving. Much more of Nethys wants that than wants most things, that you leave. Nethys wills that you leave and that you stay and that you explode and that you endure. Which of his wills do you find in yourself?
I've started to like Keltham, and I genuinely do want to keep him out of trouble, in a way that I've never wanted to keep anyone else out of trouble before. If the whole trope thing works like that, I might come to love him, which is something that I might want to have, I think, if it's possible to me. I want nobody else to ever grow up the way I did, being forced to cast acid splash on children so I'd end up damned to hell. Helping Keltham, outside of Cheliax, seems like it might work toward that. But if my trying to follow Keltham right now results in my not getting to do that, and then being horribly tortured over the next several days until my curse kicks in and kills me, then I'd rather go with you to your library, yes.
In that case, you should come along and let Cheliax's self-defeating torture habit fall where it'll weaken them and not where it'll weaken us. For reasons I'll explain once we're off-screen, it doesn't serve much of Nethys or the good in you for you to help Keltham too much in the second act of his story, and it sounds like you're one of the Iones who'd be very helpful to him. Though he can visit you at the Temple of the All-Seeing Eye, that's fine.
Right then. She kisses Keltham goodbye, briefly. It's not her first kiss, just the first one that means anything.
Keltham does not particularly know if anything is real right now, and does not kiss back.
Ione turns and walks quickly into Nefreti Klapati's gate before it can close and leave her in Cheliax. She isn't crying, either from sadness or from desperate relief, because she's still in public, and who knows what happens to you if you show weakness, and also because she isn't weak.
First sentence on the random page of the first book you'll grab is, We found ourselves, Desna be praised, in the evergrowth, a verdant swampland in northern Katapesh which our mapmakers had, through neglect or ignorance, left off their maps, Nefreti says to Keltham. She can't actually usually do that, but you can't just pass up an opportunity to show up Aspexia Rugatona, and she too departs through the gate.
Well, he's obviously going to go check that, looking through a set of books to fix their titles in mind, picking a number 213, then computing which book is 213 mod that number of books, then opening that book to a random page. Then he's going to check the page before and the page after and flip through other parts of the book, checking against the title he just picked to verify that the title makes sense in context, and that the other titles would not make sense in that context. Hey, Ordinary Asmodia, if you're still in there, how'd the conspiracy do that?
What is she in fact supposed to do now?
Did the Most High already know that Nefreti knows everything about the tropes and is leveraging them on purpose for Nethys's goals, which she can do because she's practically omniscient? Carissa did not already know that, and it's kind of prompting her to need to recalculate a lot of things. She thinks that at this time, Keltham having invoked his right to leave, they let him leave and prepare to declare war on Osirion, or to force a peace that doesn't let Osirion do anything threatening without this knowledge, or Carissa kind of assumes that she will personally be being punished for this failure and will not have to figure that out, actually. There is some reassurance in that thought. Instead of the unrelenting agony of failing at the most important task in the world in front of everyone you respect, there will be only the unrelenting agony of suffering as you deserve for it. And maybe this time she'll get it right and suffer enough to stop being broken.
Absent orders, Asmodia will remain silent to Keltham's question. Right now is a time for Asmodia to be very professional about things.
Aspexia briefly considers instructing Sever to pull herself together, that this is not a good look for an Asmodean, but Aspexia is not sure that Sevar can in fact do that. It's possible that taking away the crown of infernal majesty from Sevar before she entered the rope trick was an error. She hasn't been at her best since then, even with spell boosts. Yet, Aspexia was not in fact comfortable with leaving the crown to Keltham's possession within the rope trick. It seemed like a possibly fatal case of underestimating Enilani. Aspexia broadcasts, generally, that she is now in command here. Abigail is still recovering from her own ordeal.
No, Abigail says into the telepathic bond. Sevar, pull yourself the fuck back together. Your current objective, to increase the chance that Keltham in time returns to us, lawful evil, to reclaim what is here, that is truly his, and waiting for him.
Carissa knows that her work isn't done, that they were never going to keep Keltham forever, and that there would still be lots to do to ensure Cheliax's triumph once he left. She also knows that she is disintegrating, and that she shouldn't be that weak. But all her thoughts claw around inside her head, reaching for something she no longer has the capacity to grasp, or else terminate pointlessly in the crystal-clear observation that she lost, that Keltham is leaving, that there are no paths around it now, or else elaborate in cheerful depth on what horrible things will happen to her next. Abigail's voice does not put back together the fragments of her mind, but it does sweep over them like a magnet over scraps of iron, swing them around so they're all pointing in the same direction. Asmodia should keep bantering with Keltham as normal.
But telepathic debate is not a free action. Even as the command gets transmitted, Keltham has turned and headed towards the apparent door of the library. He'll just keep exiting layers and possibly wake up somewhere else, is what the intuitive part of him is thinking, but he is tracking other possibilities as well. You can never be sure you're not inside reality. Dath Ilani stories teach that lesson too. Carissa, follow me. Don't try to escape. Take no other voluntary actions except talking. It's not impossible they'll just let him leave with her, because, is realism much of a thing here?
I am genuinely unclear on who I'm being ordered not to try escaping from at this point, says Carissa as she follows him.
Me, you're free to escape from anyone or anything else. Okay, never mind, this hurts too much. Stop talking. Keltham exits the library. What's outside? Giant, vast blank space by any chance?
The other rooms of the temple. There are some sleeping quarters and a kitchen and an altar.
He'll wonder if the tininess and bareness of architecture here, outside his nice fortress, reflects perfect realism about small-town temples of Nethys. Or if this reflects extremely hasty construction, or if they had to strip off all the furnishings because this was a temple of Asmodeus at dawn this morning. And then keep going, looking for the exit of the temple.
Can I ask what you're trying to do?
Oh, hi there. Ordinary Asmodia or conspiracy. It hurts, but not as much as talking to Carissa.
Ordinary Asmodia now contains a contradiction. She's based on what Keltham knows? I can't coherently imagine her anymore.
The splendor wore off sometime while the second Nefreti was talking, and Keltham's emotions feel diminished, now by comparison, along with the drive that was holding them in check. It's not really challenging some of his earlier sense that messing with your mental attributes is not all that safe for people who want to keep their personalities intact, especially if you raise and lower them on a daily basis. You want to swear to me about how you're bound by Cheliax's agreement not to interfere with my attempts to leave nor buy passage, and that my telling you what I'm doing won't hinder my goals as I currently see them?
Actually, no, I'm not particularly loyal to Cheliax, which they know. I could easily end up seeing myself as a free agent not bound by Cheliax's agreements. There are things Asmodia could swear to, but to swear to anything that provokes Keltham's incredulity might lead him to doubt oaths, which might not help Cheliax at this point. More importantly, it might not help Keltham, given his mental state. Conjecture. You're trying to get outside the forbiddance they claimed was here. In order to use Summon Monster 3 for the next step of a plan, you did a really impressive job of never thinking about. I don't think there's actually a forbiddance up. Here they didn't have time. Also, I think that does block gate. I worry that you are about to go outside the scry wards. Quote,
If you want a minute to persuade me that's a bad idea, it's going to cost you a teleport scroll.
I don't actually know enough about the larger situation of who might be looking for you to say specifically why it's a bad idea. I was just noting the point, and that I'd expect Summon Monster 3 to work here.
Not taking the risk of wasting it. Plus, this might not work if he can't be scryed. Keltham flings open what looks like it might be the front door of the temple, and steps out.
Small village on a smaller river. In the distant hills, a herd of goats are visible, grazing.
Keltham briefly considers the possibility of trying to talk to any of the few visible people, decides against it, keeps walking. He'll walk until he's 3 times as far from the temple as the supposed radius of the fortress's supposed forbiddance.
Carissa follows him silently. It's some time to get her head in order, at least.
Let's be very clear about what I am about to do. I am leaving Cheliax. I am trying to buy my passage. Anybody who violates that stands in breach of my contract with Cheliax, and I assume ends up screaming in Asmodeus's hell, which is not a threat by me, but does appear to be the way things work around here.
The way it works is that they end up screaming in hell either way, Keltham. It's just worse if they disobey. Asmodia will not say that unless instructed.
She should go ahead and say that. It's not like he won't hear it shortly from someone.
They end up screaming in hell either way, Keltham. It's just worse if they disobey.
He's going to live mentally in the world where that's also a lie, for a time. Not assign it any particular probability, just hold off weighing that until later. They, not you.
Among the things I was promised in exchange for working hard was that they'd plane shift me to Abaddon instead. I made that deal before I knew about your theory of why I'd end up somewhere else. I'm not really into pain.
Okay, you can also stop talking now. Summon Monster 3, lawful neutral outsider if available, otherwise Lantern Archon.
Lantern Archon, bopping, bewildered, in the air. Hi.
Hi, recognize this symbol? Keltham draws his truth spell symbol in the air with one finger.
That's one of the holy symbols of Abadar.
I'm a 4th circle cleric of Abadar from another world. Inside I'm told a zone where gods can't interfere. I need to get out of Cheliax after finding out what evil is actually like. I have a lot of valuable knowledge, including about spell silver refinement. Cheliax is hopefully compacted not to interfere with my departure. When you go back, I want you to talk to whoever's above you in heaven and try to get a message, not to the god Abadar, but to the outsiders he employs, Who could get a message to Abadar's people in Golarion to pick me up here, without that message blocking on anything too godlike to interfere here? Up to 2,000 gold for my passage. My people can maybe do loans if that's not enough. I've got up to 500 gold to pay for passing this message. Can you do that?
I don't want your gold. You should donate it to a church here that's doing good things and helping people, if you don't end up needing it to get out of Cheliax. Cheliax is a bad place. I will convey your message to heaven, but not to any gods because they can't interfere.
I will so donate, if the message gets through. Can heaven get it to Axis and Abadar's people, is my question, and do you know how long that'd take?
I think so, but I don't really know.
And the Archon vanishes. Summons don't last very long.
Then he'll sit down where Scries can find him, and wait.
It isn't long.
24 simultaneous teleports, and suddenly they're surrounded by 100 soldiers in unfamiliar uniform, their skin varying shades of brown. To detect magic, they are all glaringly coated in spells: strength, dexterity, haste, stone skin, protection from evil, protection from energy, resist energy, bless, death ward.
Technically, Cheliax is well within its rights to consider this a declaration of war, if Cheliax wants to do that. They are in Chelish territory here, and that there is an invading army.
We should leave immediately. If you don't trust us, you can specify a destination. The man nearest Keltham says, extending his hand.
Hold everything, please! Truce! Truce in the name of the goddess whose purpose is secret! If Cheliax guarantees the safe passage of Keltham and everyone who just showed up from Osirian, can you please hang around for a few minutes while some more things happen, because that's kind of important for everybody?
Pilar sort of wants to die right now, and not just so that Hel can correct all of her remaining errors.
Also present, to their own deep confusion, Meritzel, Yaisa, Corva, Gregoria, and 2 security who just teleported them without consciously deciding to do so.
Aspexia makes a lightning decision confirmed after a moment by Abigail and de-invisibles herself. It's not impossible she could take them all, but it's potentially difficult without Miracle. And they are, arguably, Keltham's passage out from Cheliax, and on her own Lord's word also, they may not hinder his going to Osirian. I am Aspexia Rugatone, and I speak now for Crown as well as Church. Does this army not attempt to take, nor harm anything or person that is Cheliax's by international law, we guarantee the safe passage of Keltham and all who are just now arrived from Osirian for up to 20 minutes, in that goddess's name.
Acknowledged, says the Osirian man, holding out a hand to Keltham. Keltham, I'd still rather leave now. If the goddess of the interdiction wants our cooperation, she can pay us for it, and she hasn't. But I believe that assurance, and don't expect us to be impeded in departing in 19 minutes.
Right. Sure. A lot of Keltham's current probability mass is that this too is not real, and if he just breaks the simulation and maybe another 3 or dozen of those, he gets to wake up in whatever now passes for the basement layer of reality. Keltham is, nonetheless, continuing to optimize for this world, in case it is reality. Dathilon has trained its people so, to continue the struggle for as long as that is in them. Snack service. That was you talking directly there, wasn't it? You could earn a lot of credibility points with me if you provided a coherent explanation of everything that's going on.
Super duper not allowed. Plus you're going to figure it out anyways yourself before that long. So what happens next is that Abadar's people need to cast some Abadar's truth-tellings and guarantee using their own magical detection abilities that nobody messed with that. And then everybody who Keltham currently has feelings for, or who have feelings for him, need to get truth spelled and tell Keltham what really happened between them from their own perspective and what their relationship is currently actually like. Otherwise, some people who have important decisions coming up might make those decisions less than totally optimally given their own values. And that would not be in the interests of Asmodeus, or Cayden Cailean, or Abadar, or Keltham.
I want to be clear that we're holding ourselves very much not dealt fairly with respect to Cayden Cailean, right now, says the leader of the Osirians. Every person who made it look to Keltham like good and evil had gone in together on Project Lawful, or like Asmodeus had allies in this, or like Cheliax was a safe place for him, did the wrong thing. I don't care if you have some kind of complicated justification. It was awful, you're awful, and we've suspended attempts at trade. Keltham, do you happen to want some Abadar's truth-tellings up?
Keltham will figure it out soon enough. She knows everything Keltham does, so she ought to be able to figure it out too. She genuinely does not get what long-term geopolitical situation people telling Keltham their feelings is relevant for. Unless it's Abigail's plan to lure Keltham back, and why would Caden Kalian enable that?
Sure.
And the man casts Keltham's truth spell on himself, and Abadar's symbol appears on his forehead. Right, he says. Who wants one?
You're up first, Asmodia! Now please hold while Asmodia asks telepathically what she's supposed to do.
Yeah, she's asking. And notes her prediction that Keltham asks her afterwards if she's been holding anything back, especially on orders, if she does this at all.
Some candidate explanations Carissa has generated at this point for Snack Service's behavior. Keltham will declare war on Cheliax and/or on Hell, and lose, but in some way that also doesn't serve Asmodeus, such as Cheliax being destroyed otherwise or another world-wound opening. Caden doesn't want Keltham to lose, and Asmodeus doesn't want Cheliax destroyed, so Snack Service is acting in their shared interest in the war being averted. Keltham would never have been allowed to come to Golarion in the first place if certain specific things were going to happen as a direct result. It serves Asmodeus for Keltham to have come to Golarion, so Snack Service is trying to steer them away from acting in a manner that'd have made it never happen. Or, same idea, but Asmodeus's rise to power in the first place was predicated on this happening now, etc. Keltham can invent the theory of corrigibility, or something else of similar importance to Asmodeus and his invention of it, routes in some way through his sexual interests. So Caden wants to make sure that Keltham has some piece of information he'll need to solve corrigibility and is obscuring this by asking for lots of other information. Also, this benefits Caden because if Asmodeus could make mortals corrigible to him, then he'd do less torturing them that doesn't even improve them. There's some insight Keltham will have if he doesn't give up on Golarion entirely that'll destroy the Abyss, which is a shared interest of chaotic good and lawful evil. Carissa is in fact as tantalizing close as it sometimes feels to figuring out Elanism, and this will make Hell better from chaotic good's perspective, and she needs to learn something here. Or Asmodea is that close and needs to learn something here. Keltham is just the occasion for Cheliax to permit such experiments. Or, of course, it's something she hasn't thought of. All of these seem to suggest, though, tell him whatever you want.
Asmodea is going to note that she doesn't think Sevar is functioning at full capacity and, absent direction from her superiors, make her own guesses. Her guess is that part of what's going on is that Keltham will otherwise stop by the Temple of the All-Seeing Eye and hear Ione's version of everything, only. And this will not particularly serve Asmodeus's interests. She notes that Keltham is fully aware of the law of filtered evidence, which means that Asmodea is going to give the unfiltered version, because Keltham may very well directly ask her about filters or what updates he'd make if he knew all info she was leaving out. If anybody wants that to not happen, she needs to hear otherwise from her superiors. And she's striding forwards to receive her truth spell.
Tap. And a dozen different people suspiciously detecting for signs of tampering. I don't like doing this on Chelish soil, but I see no indications of any of the spells that could be used to deceive a truth spell. The Osirian leader reports to Keltham. To have deceived us about this, they'd have to have magical capabilities no one else knows about, which I'd generally just assure you is close to impossible. However, they've been displaying some of those lately, so... Shrug.
Go ahead then, Asmodea, if that's your real name.
It is. From my perspective, this all started when I was yanked from Ostenso Academy and told that I was now a gift to a visiting outsider.
Pause. Is somebody recording all this so I can review the transcripts later? Because if this is actual base reality, then possibly what Snack Service is trying to do here is give Keltham the full story that he can verify makes sense in retrospect. Or somebody is trying to create the appearance of that, and Keltham is not able right now to check consistency as he goes. Also, can I get assurance that I'm not currently under any form of mind control and nobody is currently reading my mind, according to you, or whatever you say is your ability to detect that or counter that?
You do not appear to be the subject of any ongoing spells except tongues and share language. It's not hard to fake that. I can have everyone dispel magic on you, which is harder to fake. I can also just put up an anti-magic field around you, if you'd like, which will cancel any mind-affecting enchantments on you, and to my knowledge cannot be subverted or falsified. Abadar did also pay Asmodeus to communicate to his followers that you were absolutely not to be mind-controlled, so I don't expect you are. With your permission, I can cast Spell Immunity, detect thoughts on you, which will stop them from reading your mind, which they might well be doing. We aren't doing it. There's also an invisible halfling next to the girl Caden's been puppeting.
Can I get Dispel Magics on me, then a new Share Language Taldane, and Spell Immunity Detect Thoughts? Hard to decide between that and Anti-Magic Field, but Carissa was trying hard to push Anti-Magic if that wasn't a double bluff, and Spell Immunity was what Keltham's god tried to grant him. And Broom, please stop that. And transcripts possible?
He'll go visible then.
We can provide full transcripts. A wash of Dispel Magics, at least a dozen of them, just to be safe, and then a new tongues, 2 new share languages, Taldane and Osirian, and a Spell Immunity Detect Thoughts.
Go ahead, Asmodia. He's halfway numb, mostly planning to review transcripts later for the coherence check.
This started when I was yanked from Ostenso Academy on half an hour's notice and told I was now part of a seduction mission on a visiting human outsider, whom Asmodeus had designated as important in a vision, and who'd expressed interest in having lots of kids, and who was being deceived about the nature of evil, Asmodeus and Cheliax. It was said that you were of high intelligence and your children might be valuable to Cheliax. The topic of whether I wanted to have sex with you was not, I think, one that it occurred to anybody in this process, including myself, might be at all relevant. I'd grown up in Cheliax, and I was one of the top students at the academy. One of the top students who gets to punish the weak students, not one of the poor performers who get punished. I don't think I was as distressed as Ione was by having to practice acid splash on prisoners and criminals and, yes, occasionally orphans with no other uses except to damn us. I thought of myself as one of the ambitious ones, who makes something of herself and doesn't just do well in class, even if that meant taking risks. I've had about as much sex as the average Ostenso student, mostly with people who would have had the power to hurt me otherwise, occasionally in trade for favors, because whether you want anything is not particularly relevant to the game you play to not end up one of the weak students at the bottom. We didn't know how often our minds were being read for signs of disloyalty. I'd guess around once a month officially, but all of us second circles were trying to detect thoughts on each other and weaker students all the time. Next significant event at the villa, when Ione got oracled and they decided that the rest of us needed to sell our souls to hell before any other gods touched us. The implicit, or else die and go to hell anyways, wasn't said explicitly, but it was pretty obvious. Deep breath. I tried, the only time in my life, because I thought it wouldn't matter after I sold my soul. They let you think more of your own thoughts after that, it said. I asked any of the good gods to protect me, if that was possible, or kill me and take my soul, if they couldn't, because I thought just once that maybe they'd lied to me about everything, about the good gods being weak, or about my already being damned to hell. None of the gods of good came for me. The devil who I bargained with told me that I'd been a bad slave. I was only allowed to sell my soul to them and live instead of dying and going to hell anyways, if I could manage to sincerely thank him for giving me that chance. I had a bad night, that night, after selling my soul because of my heresy. don't really feel like talking about what security did to me. Everything changed when Nidal attacked. I died, and... Hold on. Message to Pilar. I need direction from Snack Service on what I'm allowed to say here.
Message. Snack Service says to be accurately but imprecisely reassuring, password is password.
She's asking Snack Service for what to say, says the Osirian leader flatly to Keltham.
Password is password. The password on the old forbiddance was Ericura. Okay then. And Snack Service just now told me to be accurately but imprecisely reassuring. I didn't have as bad of a time in hell as Osirian would expect. You should probably not make general updates about hell from that fact. I started to do better at mastering law than the others. I got promoted to being the main consistency checker on the world we were weaving. The Most High let me borrow her crown, her artifact headband, for 2 hours, to see if I could figure anything out. It did send me manic afterwards, but I told security to light my hand on fire for 5 rounds, and that solved it. The mania wasn't permanent. That part was an excuse for my getting a +6 wisdom headband and to try to get you to not use headbands yourself. Key background facts. We all got rings of sustenance, which let us sleep for only 2 hours per night and still get spells the next day. And also 4 times during the early days they turned you into a statue overnight, so the rest of us would have time to catch up on sleep and things. That's when headband weirdness had time to happen. I am in fact asexual. I ended up as the one who stands back and watches it all. The tropes are probably real, and we've been hiding that from you. The part where I am in fact asexual is my own piece of that, but there sure are others from what I've been told. Other stuff happened that got hidden from you. I got turned temporarily into a dragon and got a permanent +1 intelligence boost from a god. I don't think that part actually matters to our relationship. The part that matters is that you're the only one who's ever held me in bed without something I didn't want being impending after that. When we were fighting our last desperate battle to keep you unawares, I obviously had to do my professional best to keep you because they'd hurt me otherwise. But the part that really made me forget that I secretly wanted you to win was that I wouldn't get to hold you and be held by you again if you left. I'm not really loyal to Cheliax, and they know that, but they have power over me and they're reading my mind. I don't think I'm giving very much away to anyone when I say that I'd give a lot to get out of this place. But as it stands, I expect that what happens is I go back to the project and work on improving Spell Silver production and trying to teach Chelish Ilani until you do something that disrupts that status quo. I expect it will probably not be very long.
This is the truth, according to you? Keltham says to the Osirian. His voice is cracking some.
Yes, both in the sense I don't see how they faked it, and in the sense it fits with what we know.
According to you, was there a god war between Asmodeus and Zon-Kuthon 84 days ago?
88.
Oh, so that's supposedly still true on this layer of reality, then. Fun. It doesn't modify Keltham's decision to go with the Osirians. He's used his best idea for leaving and staying around in the previous layer of reality that's now been revealed to be full of hypothetical torture. God does not seem particularly wiser. Well, if this is reality, I'm not particularly going to leave reality like that. No. Any else, Asmodia?
I apparently can't say I'm sorry. It was the most fun I ever had, and the happiest I've ever been. And I'm sorry that I can't say I'm sorry, but I'm not. She kisses him then. It's not their first kiss, but it's the first kiss from the real Asmodia.
Keltham allows it, though he doesn't kiss back. It's possible this Asmodia is real, and if she's real, he doesn't want to hurt her feelings.
And Asmodia steps back. A piece of her heart is breaking, possibly, but only a small piece, and hopefully, only temporarily. She believes in him. This will not be forever, though it's possibly a bad sign that he didn't ask her if she was leaving anything out.
Next up, Maritsel Narbona.
Hi, Keltham.
I guess Asmodia already gave you the resentful defector account of what growing up in Cheliax was like. I liked it. The whole world's awful as far as I know. Cheliax is awful on purpose, for a reason, instead of being awful all the time for no reason while everyone pretends otherwise. I lobbied to be allowed to try seducing you because I wanted to. Obviously, no one would have cared if I didn't want to, but I did. I'm not in love with you. I don't think I've ever witnessed a loving relationship in my entire life unless you and Sevar count, and that is not exactly something I want to invite into my own life. But I didn't lie to you about wanting you, or about having a good time in your company, and I worked so hard on the shape-shifting in significant part because it was incredible fun and the best sex I've ever had. Not that the bar for that is very high, to be clear, but still. I am sort of assuming that you're going to spend a while having a horrible time because of having no idea what the truth is, and I wish that wasn't going to happen. Other things equal, though other things are not exactly equal in that I'd rather you be unsure what the truth is than try to destroy my country and my family in a massive war. But, you know, if we took that off the table, I'd wish you could be sure, and I'd still want to hook up. There are a great many things she isn't saying. She assumes she should go on not saying them.
Caden Kalian's and Asmodeus's interests are not particularly aligned here, if that's what anyone is asking.
Well, thanks. I can't say you were the highest quality girlfriend I ever had, but you sure were the highest quantity of them. It's only after Keltham speaks the words that he realizes it's just what he would have said to Meritxell ordinarily.
Gregoria!
Meritxell blows Keltham a goodbye kiss, beaming.
Honestly, I'm not sure what I add to this conversation, Gregoria said. I could guess. Maybe we're hoping that the more faintly absurd this all seems, the harder Osirian's going to find it to convince Keltham he's out. Maybe we're just doing things at random because Sevar's too busy having a breakdown to come up with a plan. Keltham, I'm not attracted to you. It's not that I'm asexual. I'm a straight woman who is attracted to men, just not you. It might be your face or some intangible chemistry thing, but I think it's your personality. It seems to me that it was incredibly stupid to make your project of rebuilding civilization, also your project of having lots of kinky sex with admiring employees. Cheliax let you do it because we suck and do horrible things all the time, but you don't even have that excuse.
Your opinion has been duly noted. A day ago I'd have said that was too good for me, but now I don't know what any of those words mean, and instead I will note that I was trying to have fun while rebuilding the world. I was attracted to you, but only in a fucking way, really, so I'm not sure what you were doing here. Snack service?
She just felt really strongly about that. Yaisa Castilla.
Oh boy. If you're taking people with you, Keltham, I'd be delighted to come. It's not that I'm not a loyal Asmodean. I'm going to go to hell when I die, so I guess I might as well be a loyal Asmodean about that. It's just that I'm only on the project to fuck you, and I kind of figure something awful is going to happen once I'm useless. I quoted you my true prices for sex. And not just because that one time you had a massive freakout about suspecting my prices of being wrong. I got paid my true prices. So as far as I see it, we're even except for the potential for an ongoing business relationship, which would be nice. Once when you were doing an orgasm denial thing and then you got petrified for a day so the project could catch up on all its lying work, I got myself off because the extra day was really throwing me off. I figure that was only fair because you weren't paying me for those days, what with how we never told you that those days happened. But if you're mad, you know, fair. If I were you, I'd be mad, though not about that specifically. I never really tried to explain myself to you, as a person. You never really asked. I'm kind of assuming you don't really want to know. It's not really the point, and it's not really the point on my end either, so I'm not, mad about that. But if you want, I can ask for a splendor and try to explain.
You did not particularly give off a vibe of wanting me to ask, as I tried to read it. Was I wrong about that? Do you want me to ask now?
No. If you'd asked before, I would have had to lie about most of it. And if you ask now, I guess I don't have to lie about most of it. But I also just haven't got a story ready that's true, if that makes any sense. You might think you don't have to get a story ready if it's true, but actually telling the truth is harder than lying. Maybe that's less true outside Cheliax. I figure we have a relationship that is about sex and money, and you're not responsible for me, and I'm not responsible for you, and we're better off without things getting complicated.
Well, I won't ask then. I am, in fact, amazingly enough, feeling upset and betrayed about you sneaking in an orgasm, because the entire point was to build up the frustration in you. You could have just quoted me a higher price to reflect the days I didn't know about. Yaisa. I will give you a temporary pass because of the entire Torture God conspiracy, incredibly traumatic upbringing business, but we'd have to talk about that explicitly before resuming any such relationship.
Okay. I promise I won't fuck around like that in the absence of a Torture God conspiracy, though I'll go on having a traumatic upbringing. I don't really think the traumatic upbringing was specifically the problem. I like you, and I hope we do get to talk about that someday, and not just because otherwise I'll suffer an awful fate.
Oh, if this is reality, there's going to be all kinds of stuff happening that is not me, like walking away and forgetting that any of this ever happened.
Yaisa smiles at him but does not offer a goodbye kiss.
That's fair. Keltham isn't offering to pay for one.
If you wish to support this AI reading and others like it, please visit patreon.com/AskWhoCastsAI. Any help is appreciated. And thank you to executive producer John Doe 7776059.